I wanted whoever was doing this to be successful because Meow Wolf changed the entire dynamics for the tourism industry for the entire state of New Mexico. So I got to see the economic power of it. I got to see how it changed the demographic of people who are moving to Santa Fe to call it their home.
Welcome to the Talk Chamber, a production of the Greater Memphis Chamber. The Talk Chamber is the podcast for the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. This mic is powered by ORTHOSOUTH, world-class orthopedic care across the Mid-South. Today's episode features Jee Vahn Knight, the CEO of Baron von Opperbean and the River of Time. Jee, thank you so much for coming on the Talk Chamber today.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you guys here and to hear about this exciting new asset to Memphis. Mm-hmm. But before we dive too far into that, would you just go ahead and tell us, how did you get connected to Memphis?
I mean, we have to go back. Depends on how much time we have.
Let's do it.
I grew up in California, so Memphis, not on my radar. But when I graduated from college, my roommate and I were moving to Washington, D.C. And so we packed up a gigantic Escalade with only the belongings that we wanted, and we spent 3.5 weeks driving across the country. And this is pre-smartphones, pre-map. I mean, you had MapQuest, but you had to access it at an internet cafe. You're like traveling the country with an atlas. And Memphis was one of the last stops we had before we made it to the East Coast. We were tired. We were disheveled. We were out of our budget. And that was the first time I had been to Memphis and went to Graceland. And I remember Graceland. I don't remember Memphis a huge amount on that particular trip, but I'd been to Memphis. It went on the list of places that I'd been.
Check.
And yes. And then in 2018, I was working with this amazing organization called Creative Startups. They do creative entrepreneur incubators for the creative industries. So lots of incubators out there for tech industries, for med tech, but not a lot for the creative industries. And they focus solely on the economic power of creative companies. And we had work in Denver, we had work in Cleveland, we had some meetings in St. Louis, and I thought, well, I'm just going to throw my husband and my 3 kids in the car. We'll actually just road trip kind of around the Midwest. He's a blues rock guy. He was jumping at the chance to kind of see this part of the country again. And we went to Chicago, and we went and visited Muddy Waters Club, and we went down to St. Louis, and we visited Blueberry Hill and Chuck Berry. We actually took a photo on Chuck Berry's old doorstep, which is just a house, and we looked crazy, but totally okay. And then we peeled down to Memphis for about 3.5 or 4 days, and didn't really know what to expect. I hadn't been in Memphis in 15 years or so, and we stayed downtown. And what the most amazing thing was is that for whatever reason that weekend, there was multiple high schools across multiple years that were having a 40th year high school reunion, something like that. So downtown and the North Bluff Park were just full of people in their 60s and 70s who were all coming back to Memphis to celebrate their high school reunion and see all these people that they had seen to be. So yes, we were here in July. The weather was gross. It's kind of a height of tourist season, but this hotel was sold out. It was just a Spring Hill Suites. And so we were this one traveling family with small kids, and the whole hotel was full of this high school reunion participants. So we became like this little mascot family. We would come down to the lobby, and they'd be like, "Hey guys, where'd you go yesterday? And you have to go here. And did you forget your sunscreen?" Every time we were coming in and out, because they were all here for this high school reunion. So there's no other non-touristy way to really get introduced to a city than people who remember it fondly. They're coming back to celebrate it. They're coming back to celebrate their families and their friends. We spent time downtown in Sun Records, and we went down the Blues Trail into Mississippi because my husband's a blues guy, and it just had almost like a vibration to it. Mm-hmm. And Christopher Reyes, one of the founders of Bevo, he actually asked me probably about 6 months ago what it is that I remembered about that trip, what made an impression, because we'd visit Chicago, and we were in Denver, and we were in Cleveland, and we were in St. Louis. We were in all these cities that have attractions. And I said, there was just a realness to Memphis. It felt like real people. It felt like a place we could live. We were on the road for 39 days. We make it all the way back to New Mexico. And I have like a photo of the mileage, how many miles we went. And we're unpacking. We're in the kitchen. And my husband looks up and he goes, you know what city I want to spend more time in? And I turned around and looked at him and I said, it's Memphis, right? And he goes, yes. And he's like, I'm not sure why. And I said, I know. Like, and we spent the most time in Memphis on that road trip. Other cities we spent maybe 2 days. We spent the most time in Memphis. And he was like, yeah, like I want to go back. So we had this list of cities we would move to after we were ready to move on from New Mexico. We thought we'd stay there 5 to 10 years. We were now at about 13 years. Denver was on the list. Chicago was on the list. LA was on the list. I promised my husband we'd move to a music town because Santa Fe, New Mexico, not really music town unless you play mariachi. And so we put Memphis on the list. No pressure, just put it on the list. I'd kind of keep an eye on the job boards. I'd see kind of what was coming up, if something felt like the right fit, but it had to be the right fit. It wasn't, you know, they say the best time to look for a job is when you have one because you're not trying to make anything work. You're willing to kind of take the time. So I was willing to take the time. It had to move a family of 5 across states. It had to be financially. It had to be a good move for me career-wise. And then an opportunity popped up at the end of 2019. And it's hilarious because I applied for this job. I said, this company sounds perfect. But they're going to think I'm crazy because they're clearly not recruiting outside of the region. And why on earth would a woman in New Mexico whose husband is not a pilot or a doctor at St. Jude even apply here? And we kind of just went down these steps of, it's definitely not going to be the right fit. Either the money won't work out or it's not the right fit or we don't like the team and all of this. So I went into it like just believing I was going to say no. And then I would fall into the next step and be like, why is that so perfect? And then I would go into the next step and I'd be like, oh, that's kind of perfect. And I had a whole list of non-negotiables when I came out to Memphis to interview of like, it has to fit all of these things and nothing in life fits all of these things. And then I called my husband from the Memphis airport and he goes, how'd it go? And I said, I think we're moving to Memphis. And he said, Are you sure? And I said, yes. And he's like, did any of these things like not pan out? I'm like, no, we had our list. None of these things, all of these things happened. Like they've eliminated everything that we were going to say no to. I think we're moving to Memphis. And he's like, okay. I got on a plane. I had a layover in Dallas. I called my boss at that point and said, I can't email you at the moment, but I'm verbally giving you my 2 weeks notice and I'll email it to you when I land in New Mexico later that day. And 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, I was in Memphis.
Wow. That story gave me chills. I love that. And what is it now that just keeps you loving Memphis?
It's the city. Like I went to junior achievement and I get asked this question a lot of like, why did you move to Memphis? And it's crazy because it's on this spectrum of tone from curious, why did you move to Memphis to why did you move to Memphis? And I'm like, why are you asking me that question? I chose to bring my whole family here. It's not a tragedy.
Right.
And when I was at junior achievement, they said, why did you choose to move to Memphis? And I said, Memphis. You know, the city chose us. There's other things. We were looking for bigger than Santa Fe, but not huge. We were looking for deep roots within the music because when we were here on vacation, you can get music anywhere, but there's a different type of like vibration in your bones when a musician is in the places that created this history. And it's intangible. And I saw my husband light up in a way that he can still consume the music he loves where we lived, but he still lights up when we drive by Sun Records. And now he's trained all of our kids to scream the birthplace of rock and roll every time we drive by it. So, you know, you're just like going to work down Union Avenue. All of a sudden, these 3 kids start yelling the birthplace of rock and roll. You can't reproduce that. No. So, I mean, that was part of kind of why we were here. We didn't know the city well, but the city is just full of all these beautiful weirdos doing amazing things. And every, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years, the world catches on to one of these beautiful weirdos and they make an impact across the globe creatively, or their business, or something else. And then they come back to Memphis. And so now when I leave Memphis and I travel and people will say something about Memphis, I'm the person out there that's like, all of that is lies.
As
lies.
you should be.
It's lies. I had an Uber driver who was like, oh, you must be nervous every day. I'm like, lies. Sorry to yell at you, but lies.
I think it's interesting because, at least for me, I hear a lot of people who somehow have ties to Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, I was born in Memphis, and so I'm coming back to Memphis. Or my mom and dad moved in Memphis, or my husband's family is from Memphis. Some sort of something that ties FedEx, St. Jude, med school, whatever it is
yeah,
tying
ties.
them here. And they're coming for that thing. But what's unique about you is you just kind of almost stumbled into Memphis. It was not in the grand plan initially.
No, and I grew up in California, and I went to Los Angeles, and we are a bunch of judgmental West Coasters who think we're smarter and better and have better tans than the rest of the country. I mean, that's like the legacy of California,
Right.
and I will totally own that. I haven't lived there since 2003, but I moved from there to Washington, D.C., so I flipped all the way to the other side of the coast. And then the company I was working with got a job in Houston, Texas, and they said, would you move down there to be the project manager down there? And I said, sure. Footloose and fancy free, let's go to Houston. My whole family was flabbergasted. They're like, you're moving to Texas, which is kind of sacrilege for a Californian. And I said, yeah, I'm moving to Texas. And then Texas felt like, I grew up in the Central Valley of California. So where your vegetables are grown, where your almonds are grown, where your fruit is grown, where the cows are raised. It's like a little slice of the Midwest in California. I didn't grow up on the beach. So Texas was like a lot like home with bigger hats. And Houston is a huge metropolitan area.
Right.
So Texas was not entirely the culture shock that my family thought it would be. And then we made it to New Mexico, and we were there for 15 years. And New Mexico is a whole other world, and it's amazing there. And when I told my family I was moving to Memphis, they were like, "You're moving to the South?" And I said, "You had that same look on your face when I moved to Texas."
So let's pivot a bit, talk about Bevo.
Yes.
What is an immersive experience? What does that mean?
So you are in great company because the immersive industry is only about 12 years old.
Okay.
We're toddlers in terms of an industry. People are still trying to decide what things need to be called and how they're defined against each other. But the word immersive isn't new. Mm-hmm. Going to a movie is immersive. In the 80s, going to a mall was immersive. It's just something that kind of captures you on multiple senses, that transports you away from your day-to-day and either creates joy or entertainment or enlightenment or fear, as a lot of, kind of jump scare areas are. Today, immersive as an industry has a lot of different facets, which is why people don't understand it. You can have things that are like VR and AR, which is much more digital based immersive because you're completely covering your line of sight. You can have escape rooms, which are immersive in a way because they're driving adrenaline because you're trapped and you can't leave in and out. You don't have in and out entry and exit, and you have a time pressure. You can have theme parks, which everybody is aware of, which is part, an adrenaline play because you have roller coasters and you have large scale type things. And then in between, because so many theme parks have become into like an economic level that has pushed them into luxury, there was a driving need for what's in the middle market that is smaller, that can serve, but is also the next level of creative. So if you look at entertainment as a whole, it used to be music, movies, television, in-person parks. We've all seen the blending of television and movies. You've got the finale of Stranger Things that's being played on a theater. You have things in the theater that then get picked up on television. You now have barely a blip between when it gets released in theaters and when it's available on streaming. So there's this like breaking down of silos. You even have in the styles. It used to be that you could absolutely tell if something was developed for television versus film, and now you would really have to question, is that action film for television? Is it on Amazon Prime, or was it actually released in theaters? I think it's scary for a lot of people when those silos break down, but it's really exciting because it's just an affect of the human need to consume. Mm-hmm. The human brain is the most powerful computer on the planet, I believe, and we each have one in our head, and we're only aware of, I think, something like 10% of what it can do. It's doing all of these other things, and it constantly craves new content and new things to learn and new pathways and new discovery. And so entertainment was always going to blend out into that space. Music concerts became music plus the experience, plus the spectacle, and music is moving into the movies. All of these things, and the storytelling is evolving. So there's a category when you're talking about immersive experiences. There's some that is just branded immersive experience, like Netflix House and some of these things where they just take a brand and they take it out of the television or the movie and they put it in a real world scenario for you to interact with. You've got the art gallery reimagined, like Meow Wolf, where you're thinking about if you could step through a painting, if you could step into a space and have it be interactive. It is still primarily in its creation art for you to consume in an artist form of expression. And then you have these things that are kind of in the middle that are undefined. You've got escape rooms. And what Baron von Opperbean is doing is more of it's a mix of a playground for both your brain and your body. So a little bit on the escape room and the puzzling side, and a little bit on the climbing playground elements like the City Museum. But because Christopher Reyes and so many of the amazing people around him are all filmmakers, it's set within a cinematic universe. So instead of it just being in a place, because escape rooms are amazing and they have some set decoration, but nobody would believe it has the rich detail of it being a world, the majority of them. Yeah. So you set it in a cinematic universe where the purpose is not glossy. The purpose is to recreate a world. The real world isn't glossy and perfect. It's dirty and it's imperfect and it's aged, and there's stories and how did that thing get dented and who's held that thing in its lifetime. So that's the type of immersion that we're doing. And we just happen to be sitting on the most amazing asset, which is the Mississippi River Museum, which was building large-scale immersive type museum experiences in 1982.
That's awesome. How did you get involved in this industry, and then even further than that, get connected with the co-founders?
Well, that's a two-part story, and you'll just have to remind me to breathe in between.
Noted.
So when I was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there was an art collective named Meow Wolf, and they were artists. They wanted to be able to bring their gifts to the gallery, but in the way that they wanted to do it. And it was, from the stories, it was too constrained and restrictive, for that typical traditional model. And so, like true contrarians, they wanted to go out and build it themselves. And they were able to form a collective and work with some of the local residents to get a location. And Meow Wolf's House of Eternal Return opened in 2016. You can't live in Santa Fe, New Mexico and not have that business affect you. But I was a part of the group that helped rebrand Creative Startups. So when Meow Wolf went through that startup cohort, I was around the group at that time. My husband went to college with some of them, so I was closer to it than most. I got a chance to start working with them in 2018. We did a Meow Wolf Startup Accelerator with Creative Startups, and then I joined as the Director of Marketing Strategy. And it was, for me, the perfect mission, the wrong time in my life. I had really small children. It was almost too crazy for me at that stage, but I loved what they were doing. So I got a chance to work with them, and then I also got a chance to say, I don't think this is the right fit for me in this time period. It's not compatible, and that's when I moved to Memphis. So I was working at Meow Wolf up until 2 days before I started my new job in Memphis. And So I had that juxtaposition. Now, how I got connected with the founders of Bevo, I'll put it this way. Memphis did that because so I became known, my kids are at Lausanne, and I became known as the woman that used to work at Meow Wolf.
What a name.
And I was fairly certain, just by the dynamics of not that many people are moving from New Mexico to Memphis, that I was probably the only person in the city, because the company's not that old either, that used to work at Meow Wolf. And my kids said, can you come and present to my class? And I said, what do you want me to present? And they were like, oh, we want you to talk about Meow Wolf. And I said, sure. So I brought up a couple of YouTube videos. I had a bunch of photos of my kids. And this was still during COVID. So they did it to me over Zoom. And I had all of these kindergartners on the screen. And I could barely talk because they were all screaming.
Of course.
Because climbing into a dryer is a very scream-worthy thing to see.
Yeah.
And I kind of developed this, not reputation, but just this moniker. 6 months later, this family came up to me and they said, yeah, we went to Meow Wolf for spring break. And I said, oh, really? You were in Santa Fe? And they said, yeah. Well, you went and presented to the class, and then my 7-year-old wouldn't stop talking about how he wanted to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico for spring break. And I said, your 7-year-old wanted to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico for spring break. And so they went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. So all these Memphians ended up going to Santa Fe. And about every 6 months, someone would say to me, hey, Jee, there's a Meow Wolf in Memphis. And I said, there isn't a Meow Wolf in Memphis. And they go, but there's something, but Meow Wolf is coming to Memphis. And I said, no, Meow Wolf isn't coming to Memphis. Something like Meow Wolf is here. And I said, definitely possible. And they're like, yeah, it's this thing called Baron von Oppenheimer. I'm like, okay, what is that? So I Google and I'm like, immersive experience, neon colors, flashing lights. Cool. Looks fun. Looks awesome. Pop-up is already closed. I can't go. I wish you luck. I wanted whoever was doing this to be successful because Meow Wolf changed the entire dynamics for the tourism industry for the entire state of New Mexico. So I got to see the economic power of it. I got to see how it changed the demographic of people who were moving to Santa Fe to call it their home. I sold my house in New Mexico to a young family that had a 2-year-old daughter that had just taken jobs at Meow Wolf. And I felt like it was this full circle thing because they bought the house to then raise their 2-year-old daughter and get out of the touring life. That's what it did to change New Mexico, where before that, the average age of people moving to live in Santa Fe, New Mexico was 65. So it drastically changed the economics of the city. So that power was always really fascinating to me because that's what actually grows families and supports and turns, local residents into business owners and into leaders. Let me tell you, this went on for almost 4 years.
Wow. Golly.
And and finally, in the early 2025, I was no longer working with the company that brought me to Memphis. I was taking a nice professional break. I was just doing 100% mom and breathing for the first time. And another person who knew me pretty well sends me the BVO website and says, if you're not working with them, you probably should be, because they probably need all the help they can get. And I was like, okay, I'm done. I go on LinkedIn and I'm like, who is the person in charge of Bevo? I'm going to go. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to cheer them on. I'm going to learn about their project. And then I will have an official opinion on the company and I can go my merry way. And then when people ask me about it, I can be like, yeah, they're doing this, this, and this. It's great. You should support. You can reach them over here and I will have an official opinion on Bevo. And I reached out to Ruben and he said, hi, can you come here on Tuesday? And I said, sure. I had no idea what was to expect. And what was to expect was that there was no power in the building that day. And I thought I was meeting Ruben, and I walked in the door, and it was Ruben, Marvin, and Christopher, and it was Catherine. So it was all 4 founders in the building, and Catherine was like running through the building with a television on her way out. And I was like, hi. And then I quickly realized that they were sharing with me the entirety of the project. And it was really interesting because I kept thinking, if they get it off the ground, there's some headwinds. And then they walked me out and they're like, okay, but this is what's already in the building. And they walked me through this very dark hallway because they were all lighting the way with their phones because the building had no power. And we walk out onto the existing riverboat. And that was the moment where I just said, okay, I'm sorry. This boat is for you guys to work on? Yeah. It's in the building. Yes. It's included in your lease. Yes. You can do whatever you want to it. Yes. You can transform it and stick it in space. Yes. Are there any restrictions on it? No. Well, funding, but no. And you have the building for the next, 5 + 5 years. Yes. Okay. So when are you opening? Oh, that's one of the things we have to figure out. No. That is the only thing you have to figure out. That was probably 4 months before I ended up coming in full time, and really joining the crew and putting us on this crazy trajectory, which felt absolutely realistic at the time. And now even I'm astounded at the the insanity of it.
What's the response been like, and how do you foresee this impacting Memphis?
There are so many possibilities for impacting Memphis. A location is everything in this business. It's everything. And when I started sharing with people in my network who are not in Memphis, who are catching up of what are you working on now? So many great creatives that are wanting to get into the immersive industries that put together a pitch that are then trying to go out and get their ideas funded. They're looking for a location, or they're looking for a warehouse that they can build in or something like that. And location is everything, so that it's everything, and it's already checked off the list. On that sense, it's so exciting that the opportunity to create this beautiful, almost mirror to downtown in a celebration across the river and across downtown. And then, economically, it has the opportunity to fire off, a storm underneath tourism, which is amazing because when you have an anchor creative attraction, it powers food and beverage around it. It powers lodging. It powers other creatives because it's not a theme park. It's not a thing that you go to for 6 days. So if you can't go to it for 3, 4, 5 days, there are other activities that need to be around. But when we boil it down, I remember, and Marvin's here in the room with us, I think it was the second day, we were barely awake.
I'm sure. I can only imagine.
We were working through how to check people in and point of sale. And we would turn around and we would look out this window. And there were children jumping across the Riverwalk, as naturally children do. And the Riverwalk didn't have water in it, but they were on the island. And their natural instinct was to just start playing in what is. And I was like, look, there's children on the river. They weren't just with blinders walking from the parking lot to Bevo. They were on the island and experiencing joy. And joy is one of those uncontainable energetic forces in your body. If you are sitting in the middle of pure joy, you have no choice but to share it with the closest human near you, whether you're at a sporting event or an art gallery, or at a party. When you are experiencing joy, you literally can't contain it in your head. And so you then reach out and you connect that joy with another human being, and they connect that joy with another human being. So, there's 2 places, one kind of behind the house where you won't see us. We're literally behind a wall, and the team can stand there and you can just hear people yelling and laughing and being astounded and expletives and everything of just I'm lost and where am I? And oh my gosh, and so-and-so would like this. And then we have another place, which, has a slide, and it does not matter what age you are. We have heard people from the ages of probably 4, that's probably the youngest that could make it down by themselves, to, I don't think it's a stretch to say maybe like 75. Wow. We can hear them laughing and screaming going down that slide. And that's just pure, uncontainable joy. It's infectious. Every city needs it. Every family needs it. And it's the building blocks of then having something that we all get to take pride in. That's ours. Yeah. And we're going to share it. What's next? They only opened 8,000 square feet. Can I be a part of the next 10,000 square feet? Can I be a part of it before it reaches 33,000 square feet? Okay, well, when they're done with 33,000 square feet, there's a 52-acre park. What's happening there? Like, that's what we're trying to preserve. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, but if we can preserve the next steps in the momentum, I mean, that's our job right now.
So our time is almost up, but I have got 1.5 questions for you. So what does Mud Island need next? What can the business community, can our community do to help Bevo thrive?
Mud Island needs vision, and it needs a community that will rally around a central vision. I don't know if it'll be collective vision. I don't know if it'll be a consensus vision, but once a vision is set, we do need the community to rally around what that vision is, because seeing it through to fruition versus seeing 10 ideas halfway executed is what we need for the island itself. It was an asset to the city for the first 40 years. What do we need to do right now so that we can give it long-term life and manageable maintenance costs for the next 50 years? So, but I think more simply than that, if you haven't had a chance to come, please do, at least once. We invite everybody, whether you're a skeptic or you're excited or you're a naysayer, just come and have the experience for yourself. And whatever you take away from it is definitely yours. But we're trying to reach as many people in the city as possible, because for us, we like to say that Bevo isn't located in Memphis, it is Memphis.
Now that brings me to my half question. How can people find out about you? Who can go? When can they go?
We are open every day except for Tuesday. Tuesday is the one day that the artists and the builders need to get back in and keep tweaking and adding more, week over week. On the weekdays, general admission starts at noon and last entry is at 8 p.m., but we stay open until 10. So if you come in at 8, don't worry, you're not getting kicked out unless it's 9:59. Which we have done. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, those hours are 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So you can buy tickets online. 50% of the people who come, we actually see them on the website in the morning. They'll buy a ticket for 11, and then they just get in their car and come across the city and come in. Some people come and they walk up at the door. So it's bvoexp.com. We're here for Memphis and open, so don't be afraid to come and walk up. It's not yet at a place that has, waiting lists and lines out the door. So we're here. If you want a birthday party, engagement photos, corporate rentals, all of those things are also open. We've done engagement photos. We had our first marriage proposal the week after we were open.
That's cool.
We've hosted chamber events. We had the Chairman's Circle come out. So it is also an exciting new venue to add to the mix for people who are looking to give their teams a different backdrop. Birthday parties are a great deal of fun because we have a space that's very close to the exhibit, so you can actually kind of come in and out across your birthday party.
Jee, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Talk Chamber. We are so glad you're here. Today, Jee shared with us about Bevo and the exciting new asset that has come to Memphis, right here on Mud Island. If you enjoyed this episode or learned a valuable piece of information, share this episode with a friend, or maybe even a colleague. Subscribe to The Talk Chamber to keep up with the latest on the Chamber, economic development, and all things Memphis. Follow us on social media at Memphis Chamber, and we'll see you next time.